Okay, right now I have the pleasure and honour of being joined by Joyce Catlett and Dr. Lisa Firestone, both from the Glendon Association. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics in the City today. Now, first of all, I think what would be good to explain to our users is exactly what you do. So, Lisa, do you want to go first?
Sure. Glendon is a nonprofit, and we do research, education, and training to try to help people live better lives, to stay alive, live more meaningful lives. And so we're working on problems to do with child abuse and early parent-child relationships and how those impact us in our later life in terms of our relationships, in terms of risk for suicide, in terms of risk for violence. And so we work in a lot of, we take our basic theoretical brace and apply it to a number of different areas.
So a lot of heavy stuff.
A lot of heavy stuff. It's a little heavy sometimes.
You're right about that.
And Joyce, how long have you been with the association?
Since it first started in 1982.
Wow.
And one of my major reasons for enjoying working as I do with the Glendon Association, or even for its why it was founded, was to really provide a forum or a way to disseminate the ideas of Glendon's principal theorist, that's Lisa's father, Dr. Robert Firestone. Because I think his views and his theories about human behavior are very important and actually groundbreaking, and to get them out to not only professionals, mental health professionals, but also to the general public. That's our one of our main missions, our mandate, to do that.
Brilliant. Well, when how I found you guys was I ended up on one of your courses, and for me it was just completely sort of it was just so sort of enlightening, and I thought, my goodness, I would love to make sure that our users get to know exactly what you guys do. And I think what would work for us is if we break down this interview into various sections.
Sure.
And I think maybe if we started off with childhood and how childhood can impact your adult life, and how often we are reacting to stuff that's happened in our childhood and we don't even realise that's what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah, so how important is childhood in shaping the rest of your life?
It's very important. And, you know, first of all, our parents' childhood is very important in shaping our childhood because what parents with the best of intentions have children wanting to, you know, have a very positive experience, but often what interferes with parents being able to parent is the intrusion of their past. And particularly any unresolved issues from their past, pain, trauma. And I don't mean it has to be big T trauma, something very dramatic that happened, but even just neglect or being ignored, or, you know, whatever might have happened when they were children, put down, criticized, even just having a parent that's depressed so they're not really available, you know, which isn't intentional on the parent's part, but it really does impact the child. And particularly any unresolved emotional hunger they have from their own childhood, things that they didn't get in terms of their needs, often then get projected onto the child and have a very big impact in terms of how they're relating to the child. And that, whatever psychological defenses the child forms to deal with the interpersonal pain very early in their life, really become part of how they approach the world. And what children tend to do is to idealize their parents at their own expense, and think badly about themselves, and be self-critical and self-hating in ways throughout their life. And also they tend to project their parents' negative traits out into the environment. So they see it in their partners, their romantic partners, or their friends, or their boss. And then in a way they have sort of a paranoid orientation toward life, where they're kind of seeing everybody more in terms of their past. And in that way, they end up reliving their childhood over and over and again, unfortunately.
Resolve it.
Yeah, in their current life. I was speaking to a woman today who I'm doing therapy with, who is trying to sort of break her connection with her mother, who's been repeatedly fairly abusive in her life, and every time she kind of invites her back in, like when she was getting married, she felt like she had to invite her mom, so she did, but then it was a bad experience again. And there's sort of been these repeated bad experiences, but she's trying to break with her mom, but then she starts to miss her mom and idealizes her mom. Meanwhile, she starts to act out the worst traits of her mother in her romantic relationship.
Oh my God, so she becomes the mother.
She becomes her mother, starts seeing her husband in a very negative light, this guy who really loves her and that she felt really good about 2 weeks ago before she started trying to break with her mom. She felt just fine with him for the last 15 years. Now all of a sudden he's ignoring her and not meeting her needs, and, you know, she's projecting all the bad traits of her mom onto her husband. and then, you know, blowing up at him, which has been
Wow.
uncharacteristic in their relationship.
And so often people do this unconsciously, don't they?
Yes,
Joyce?
like if they're fogging over, like this woman was, the traits that were negative in her mother and not quite seeing them or admitting them or sort of denying them, then she's bound to repeat these in her relationship with her husband or with, she's already married, right?
Yes.
She got married. She'll see him in a way that really her mother is, in a negative way. And
So
we
even if
found-
he's not doing that,
Exactly.
she's seeing
Or,
him.
or even if he might be even mildly critical, she'll take some mild remark of his and exaggerate it out of all proportion and then react in a very negative way or fall apart. But she's reenacting the environment of her early childhood.
Is there a point where it's more damaging to have had trauma as a child, i.e. the earlier or the later in childhood? What's more damaging as an adult?
Well, I think the very early days actually sort of set the stage for what's going to happen later on. I'm not saying that later trauma doesn't hurt people. I mean, even trauma that happens to us as adults obviously can hurt us a lot. But during those first couple years of life, the child's brain is really organizing. And it's laying down neural pathways that are going to be there for a lifetime. And they're also learning how to regulate their emotions. And the only way they can do that initially is by the parent being able to regulate their emotions. So the more attuned the mother is, the more she's able to resonate with the baby, to discern the baby's states and the baby's needs and meet those needs. And there's always going to be mild frustrations. It's not that a parent who's a good parent gets it right all the time. They get it right about 30% of the time.
Only 30%.
Only 30%. That's pretty good. That's considered good. And then, but when they miss,
How do you get to 100? How do you get to those sorts of levels?
I don't think those kind of numbers exist. I think that's our idealizing our mother.
30% is known as, quotes, good enough parenting, which is good enough.
Right, and then, but then the other thing that happens with a good enough mother is not only is she getting it right 30% of the time, but when she's missing, she notices and is able to repair
Readjust.
and reattune with the child.
Yeah.
So instead of getting thrown off, you know, not the mother who's, you know, trying to feed the baby the bottle and the baby keeps fussing and she just keeps trying to give him the bottle. That's not noticing that you
The baby
missed.
doesn't want it.
Yeah, that's not what the baby wants. So you stop giving him the bottle and you try something else, you know, and you learn your baby's signals, you know, and you become more attuned to that baby. But not everybody can do that, particularly when the baby's crying